On this Wednesday night, Israeli troops raid Gaza's largest hospital. Medical staff scramble to protect patients. What Israel claims it's found, and what Gaza's critical shortage of fuel means for aid workers. Plus, the sharp response from Israel's Prime Minister to Justin Trudeau's call to exercise maximum restraint. A mission to make amends, the high-stakes summit between the presidents of the U.S. and China. And their goal goes beyond winning. The soccer fans trying to reclaim the beautiful game. Plus, foul conclusion, how a barfing bird was just voted Bird of the Century.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. Israel warned it would target Gaza's largest hospital, and 3 hours before dawn, its soldiers swept in what it calls a precise and targeted mission. The Israeli army released this video, its tanks rolling towards Al-Shifa Hospital in the darkness. That hospital is full of patients, and medical staff scrambled to move them to safety. Staff say dozens of soldiers roamed through the emergency department and intensive care, ordering men between the ages of 16 and 40 to leave the building.
Military equipment. There is an AK-47. There are cartridges, ammo.
The IDF also released this video, which it says proves Hamas is using the hospital as a terror headquarters. We can't verify the video. Israeli authorities have long claimed Hamas operates its command center under Al-Shifa Hospital. Staff say they have no knowledge of that. Details of what exactly happened inside the hospital are limited. The World Health Organization says at one point it lost contact with its medics inside Al-Shifa. Our coverage begins with Mike Armstrong, and a warning, some of the pictures are distressing.
In the chaos of Israeli troops moving in on the Shifa medical complex, a doctor on the ground says staff was warned to stay away from windows. As a result, it's hard to tell what's going on outside. But this video, released by the Hamas-run health ministry, appears to show the commotion on the inside.
There is continuous shooting and firing outside the hospital or inside. We don't know exactly, but it's like within the area.
Staff and volunteers scrambled to move the 33 remaining premature babies to another part of the complex. 3 have already died after power to their incubators went out. Now, the Israeli Defense Forces released video it says shows soldiers delivering aid. It says it's clearing parts of the complex, going room to room, and that several Hamas fighters have been killed. But the IDF insists while it's searching for Hamas and hostages, it also has specialized teams trained to help.
The IDF forces include medical teams and Arabic speakers who have undergone specified training to prepare for this complex and sensitive environment.
Across the Gaza Strip, at a time when there is more need for medical services than ever, there are fewer and fewer of those services available. The World Health Organization says of Gaza's 3,500 hospital beds, only 1,400 are usable. 21 of 35 hospitals have shut down.
They are going into other buildings.
The Palestinian Prime Minister says Israel is waging a war on hospitals, while the head of UN Emergency Relief says he's appalled by what's going on in and around hospitals.
I understand the Israelis' concern for trying to find the leadership of Hamas. That's not our problem.
Now, for the first time in weeks, Israel allowed fuel into Gaza. A single truck moved in from Egypt carrying diesel for the United Nations. The UN had said it needed fuel for its aid delivery trucks, otherwise it would have had to shut down its humanitarian operations. Well, the head of UNICEF was on the ground in Khan Yunis Tuesday. Catherine Russell says to keep helping, the organization needs the fuel to keep flowing, and it needs a ceasefire so its staff can move around.
Most of the people who work for UNICEF in Gaza are from Gaza, and they're so incredibly courageous, but they need to be able to do their work safely.
Now, that one truck of fuel was about 27,000 liters. The UN says it needs more than 10 times that every day just to keep going. What it's seeing right now in Gaza, it calls the cascading collapse of essential services. Donna?
All right, Mike Armstrong in Jerusalem, thanks. There are hostages trapped in Gaza too, and their families worry they have been forgotten. Hundreds Hundreds of relatives are marching from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, demanding Israel's prime minister focus more on getting the hostages released. More than 200 people were kidnapped during the October 7th raid by Hamas on southern Israel. 4 have been released, 1 has been rescued, and Israel now confirms 1 woman, a 19-year-old Israeli soldier, has been killed. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is in San Francisco for the APEC summit, and he's drawn a sharp response from Israel's prime minister over his assertion that Israel should show maximum restraint in Gaza. It's a topic that may not be on the agenda of the APEC summit, but it is certain to get discussed. David Akin is traveling with the prime minister.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau used his sternest language yet, asking the government of Israel to prosecute its war against Hamas in a different way.
I urge the government of Israel to exercise maximum restraint. The killing of women and children, of babies. This has to stop.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu tagged Trudeau in a post on social media saying, "It is Hamas, not Israel, that should be held accountable for committing a double war crime, targeting civilians while hiding behind civilians." The 2 men have spoken by phone twice since the October 7th attacks, and Canada has not changed its position that Israel has a right to defend itself from Hamas. Still, Trudeau's unusually strong language and Netanyahu's response was unique.
It's easier to go after a political target like Canada. We don't have the same material ability to underwrite Israel's military campaign the way the U.S. does.
The Canadian government's position has drawn strong responses.
Ceasefire now!
Angry protesters made their way into and gathered Tuesday night outside a Vancouver restaurant where Trudeau was eating, prompting him to leave because of security concerns, his office said. Then nearly 100 police had to be deployed when another group confronted the PM later in the evening. 2 people were arrested. On Wednesday, Trudeau headed to San Francisco for the annual summit of Pacific nation leaders known as APEC. Trudeau is keen to push APEC countries to tackle the global affordability challenge and find ways to lower food prices at home.
This is an important discussion.
Still, with a war in the Middle East and in Ukraine, APEC leaders may find it difficult to advance trade and economic issues.
If this very strong and dynamic group of countries can find ways to integrate and to grow and prosper, then that leaves us all better off.
This is going to be a quick trip for the Prime Minister, just 2 nights, and then back to Ottawa on Friday. Donna?
All right, David Akin in San Francisco tonight. Thanks. Ahead of the summit is a high-stakes meeting between the leaders of the world's 2 largest economies. The American President, Joe Biden, sat down with China's President, Xi Jinping, and Xi said the 2 countries turning their backs on each other is not an option. Jackson Prosco on signs of a relaxation in a tense relationship.
Ready. This California summit comes at a fragile time, with 2 superpowers locked in a tense competition that could easily lead to conflict.
I think it's paramount that you and I understand each other clearly, leader to leader, with no misconceptions or miscommunication.
So much has happened since Joe Biden and Xi Jinping last shared a room 1 year ago. A Chinese surveillance balloon was shot down over the U.S. Xi struck up a no-limits partnership with Russia's Vladimir Putin, and U.S. support for Taiwan led China to sever official military communications at a time when there's more close encounters than ever between their armed forces. Still, Xi suggested both countries can coexist if they're allowed to chart their own paths.
It is unrealistic for one side to remodel the other, and conflict and confrontation has unbearable consequences for both sides.
The summit may deliver a slight thaw in this otherwise frosty relationship. The 2 biggest polluters on the planet agreed to triple renewable energy production by 2030. And China says it will better regulate the chemicals used in the production of fentanyl to help curb the U.S. opioid crisis.
I think this is more about the optics of the 2 leaders trying to kind of reassure their countries in the world that that they're not on a kind of war footing.
But war could be a simple miscalculation away, especially over Taiwan and the South China Sea, where China continues to flex its military muscle at an alarming pace. The White House was quick to tamp down hope for a major breakthrough. suggesting it believes the summit may open the door enough for the U.S. and China to talk through their differences and at the least agree to disagree. For China, this is in many ways a reassurance tour that will include an audience with top U.S. business leaders at a dinner in California. Executives will reportedly pay $40,000 per table for a chance to be in the same room as the leader of the world's second largest economy. Donna?
Jackson Prosco in Washington, thanks. We have an update tonight on a global news investigation that found Canada has become a safe haven for hundreds of people connected to the Iranian regime. They're accused of threatening the lives of some Canadians here. Yesterday, Global's Negar Moshtahedi pressed the Prime Minister for answers. Negar.
Donna, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or IRGC, is a powerful paramilitary organization responsible for a lot of the human rights violations in Iran. I asked the Prime Minister how he planned to hold them accountable.
Prime Minister, will you commit to listing the IRGC as a terrorist entity?
We continue to watch and make sure that we're able to do everything we can that is responsible against the impact of the IRGC.
With all due respect, Prime Minister, the people who spoke to us, they said that they risked their lives just to speak to us, and they are desperate for a direct answer from you. Could you please answer my question? Will you list the IRGC or commit to listing the IRGC as a terrorist entity? Yes or no?
We will continue to do everything necessary, both to hold that regime to account, to limit its impact around the world, and to protect Canadians.
Regrettably, he never has an answer.
The IRGC shot down Ukraine International Airlines Flight 752 in 2020, killing all 176 people on board, including 55 Canadian citizens and 30 permanent residents. This lawyer says the Prime Minister resorted to well-worn talking points.
It's really a mystery as to what else the IRGC needs to do to be listed as a terror group. The IRGC has a documented record of killing Canadians and killing people of other nationalities besides, the repression of home.
When we pressed for a simple yes or no on designating the IRGC a terrorist entity, my mic was turned off, and I was politely told by Trudeau's team that my time was up. Donna?
All right, Negar Moshtahedi, thank you. A Manitoba man killed in Ukraine. Coming up, why he volunteered to fight Russian forces. The world's focus may have shifted from the war in Ukraine, but 21 months after it started, Russia is still on the attack. Ukrainian troops say they've now secured a foothold on the eastern bank of the Dnipro River. That would be a significant advance, opening a new route to Crimea. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says his soldiers are 70% of the way there, but Russia is not letting up. At least 2 more people were killed today when a missile smashed into this apartment block in an eastern city. Crews raced to clear the debris and search for survivors. Russia has denied it is targeting civilians. Among those joining Ukraine's fight against Russia are foreign nationals, including some Canadians. Tonight, a northern Manitoba First Nation is mourning the loss of a Cree man who died fighting there. Melissa Ridgen spoke to his sister about his life and death on a battlefield abroad.
Austin Laughlin-Bercier had an adventurer's spirit and humanitarian soul.
He was always like a community person. He always liked going out, volunteering.
He was in the Canadian Armed Forces Bold Eagles as a teen, a summer training program for Indigenous youth from Western Canada and Northwestern Ontario, with plans to join the infantry. But while Laughlin-Bercier was traveling abroad in 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine. He felt he couldn't just stand by while a sovereign country was attacked by an authoritarian regime. He flew to Poland, then crossed into Ukraine to join the fight.
I think mainly he went there because he's seen on the news of how many innocent women and children were being killed. And for him, he's always been protective of women, children, and even those who couldn't defend themselves or can't defend themselves.
He kept loved ones updated with texts and social media posts. His final words to his mom, all good here. 2 days later on Remembrance Day, the worst news.
My mom called me and let me know that he was gone.
Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew is among the many calling the 25-year-old a hero. A Opaskwayak Cree Nation says he will be honored as one.
I'm sure it's going to be a big event, not just from this community, but the armed services community. and probably the Ukrainian community.
Lachlan Bercier's family is coordinating with the Canadian government for his remains to return home to be buried next to his grandmother. Melissa Ridging, Global News, Winnipeg.
The UK's plan to send migrants to Rwanda rejected. Ahead, what the British PM plans to do now. Parts of eastern and northern France are under a state of emergency tonight. Widespread flooding has forced thousands from their homes. Heavy rains have also severely damaged roads. Meteorologists say things are improving slightly now in northern France, but more rain is expected in the coming days. The UK's highest court has ruled a government plan to ship some asylum seekers to Rwanda is unlawful. The plan was intended to deter migrants from crossing the English Channel in small boats, a dangerous journey that's led to hundreds of deaths. Britain's Prime Minister, though, is still vowing plane loads of migrants will leave for Rwanda as planned in the spring. Our Europe Bureau Chief, Crystal Gamansing, reports on how he plans to do that.
The rule of law is fundamental to our democracy.
To stay within the rule of law and stop the boats, as his podium says, Rishi Sunak will introduce new legislation addressing, he says, the High Court's findings that asylum seekers sent from the UK to Rwanda could be wrongly returned to the country in which they were fleeing.
Asking ourselves whether there were substantial grounds for believing that a real risk of refoulement existed at the relevant time, we have concluded that there were.
The Conservatives inked a deal with Rwanda last year to fulfill a pledge to stop illegal migration. Following the Supreme Court's ruling, the Prime Minister announced a new treaty with Rwanda was in the works, guaranteeing in law those relocated from the shores of the UK to the East African nation will be protected from being removed from Rwanda, and the UK will bring back anyone if a court mandates it. Plus, emergency legislation to confirm the new treaty, stating the UK deems Rwanda as safe. Citing a track record of serious human rights violations, Amnesty International issued a statement labeling the Rwanda plan ill-conceived and cruel, saying the government should make policies which fit with the law, not fit the law around their policies.
It's really important, I think, to bear in mind that stopping the boats is just never going to happen.
The government maintains the policy is a deterrent and that flights will depart this spring. The European Court of Human Rights could still challenge the UK's Rwanda policy. Ousted Home Secretary Suella Braverman had previously suggested the UK cut ties with the court. The Prime Minister is now warning it not to get involved, saying if pressed, he is willing to revisit international relationships. Crystal Gamansing, Global News, London.
More than a game. Next, soccer fans trying to rebuild the sports culture. A vote in New Zealand is ruffling some feathers. Thanks to a global campaign started by a comedian, the Pū Teki Teki has been crowned Bird of the Century. It's also known as the Australasian crested grebe. It caught the attention of John Oliver, who said, "What's not to love about the weird puking bird with a colorful mullet?" So he put up billboards around the world, exploiting a loophole in the contest that allows anybody with a valid email address to vote. More than 350,000 people from 195 countries did. That's over 6 times the previous record. And the Pū Teki Teki won in a landslide. Only about 3,000 of the birds are believed to exist in the wild. And just a few more fun facts. They eat their own feathers to induce vomiting as a way of expelling parasites. There you go. And its song is a chorus of grunts, growls, and barks. What's not to love? Professional soccer players aim to be the best in the world, and the greatest scorers make hundreds of millions a year. Now a group of soccer fans in England has decided to go back to the basics of the beautiful game. They pitched in to rebuild their favorite local team, and as Redmond Shannon explains, they did it according to their own values.
In the heart of Cockney East London is the city's modern Olympic Stadium, home of billion-dollar Premier League soccer team West Ham United. Just 2 miles away is London's oldest senior soccer field, the Old Spotted Dog Ground, home of Clapton Community FC, Both are part of England's vast pyramid of connected leagues, but the ways they're run are a million miles apart.
When these big teams and the fans say, "Oh, we won," I said, no. They won, you watched. When we win, we do win, because we own the club, we have ownership.
Make that 1,600 co-owners, part of a small but growing movement among soccer fans who want their game back. After a split with the previous team owner over ticket prices, these fans reformed the historic club, putting community into its name. Entry is now about $7. Concessions work on a trust-based system. The whole project part financed by a unique shirt design that unexpectedly went viral in Spain.
It was a shirt that was in the colours of the Second Spanish Republic. And the shirt is in homage to the international brigades who came from across the globe to support the war against fascism. And we sold in one day £148,000 worth of sales and shirts. Yes, this is a Step 7 club, but we sold that many in just one day.
The new club started women's teams for the first time, giving them equal funding to men and campaigning for better female prize money. It also has open access teams for people of all abilities.
It's not about showing your skills, it's more about community being together, encouraging each other, being really supportive, and we're all learning together.
Bucking the hooligan stereotype, the team welcomes refugees and trans players and has zero tolerance on hate speech.
Yeah, just like a much more inclusive way to go and see football, and it's a nice sort of antithesis to what the high levels of football have become.
Winning or losing is secondary to a sense of community, and for many, it's even a sense of family. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
And that is Global National for this Wednesday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Your Canada is Leeches Creek on Cape Breton Island, Nova Scotia. We'd love to see your Canada, especially wintry photos, as it is mid-November. Please email them to viewers@globalnational.com. And thanks for watching. Hope to see you here again tomorrow. Bye-bye.